Good morning, everybody. It's Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and I've started working on this quilt behind me, which I'm actually doing a video of how I'm making that quilt. It's a work in progress right now, and you will see that video sometime in the near future. But right now, I'm just starting to do some flying geese that I'm going to put on that, and it came to my mind, maybe I should show you how I make flying geese. Now, I'm not doing anything revolutionary here. I learned this from several videos on YouTube and other places over time. So this may be redundant, maybe it's not. But I have made flying geese in various ways. And if you go to a standard book about quilting that talks about how to make flying geese, they may show you the more traditional way, which works but is not as accurate as the method I use. And I also find it somewhat cumbersome. So I'm going to explain how I do it. And it all starts with this really cool ruler. Now this ruler is a Creative Grids ruler. It's called the Ultimate Flying Geese Tool, designed by Deb Heatherly. Now I'm not being sponsored by them or anything like that, although if they ever reach out to me and want to sponsor me, hey, I'll go for it. But no, so this is my opinion of this ruler. Now I have used other flying geese rulers, and there are lots of them on the market, I can tell you that. But first off, do you need a flying geese ruler? No, you don't. But it makes life a lot easier. So in my opinion, since flying geese and half square triangles are the two most basic and principal components of most quilts, then I think it really is a good investment to buy a flying geese ruler. But you have to buy one that you'll be comfortable with. Now I was using Quilt in a Day flying geese rulers, and I really liked them. They worked really well. Deb Tucker from Studio, is it Studio 360 or Studio 180? I think it's Studio 180 she calls it. She has some that are pretty good as well. But this one by Creative Grids, I find, is the one I like the best. It really allows you to make flying geese at different sizes, and basically the instructions for using this are right on the ruler itself. So it's worth the investment, and I forget what it cost, maybe $25, $30, something like that. And at first I wasn't going to buy one of these. I took a class where we're called Geese Galore, and I've shown that quilt at some point in time. And I was all prepared to use the rulers that I had. And the instructor, she was suggesting this ruler. And when I saw it being used, I went, oh yeah, I want one of those. I want it now. And so I got it. So let me explain what's neat about this ruler. You see there's a lot of lines on this, okay? But don't let that throw you off. First of all, over here on this side, it talks about what you need to make the size of flying geese that you're going to make. So today, I'm going to be making flying geese that measure, and there's a column here called finished size. They are 3 by 6, 3 inches by 6 inches. They look like this when they're done, okay? And you can see them in my quilt behind me already. So I find that 3 by 6, and it says that I need to cut one piece of fabric 7 3/4 inches square, and I've chosen for my inside part, I don't know what you call that, but my goose maybe, I don't know, but the pyramid part, triangle part, I have chosen this fabric. So this piece is cut 7 3/4 inches square, okay? And then right beside that, it says you need to cut 4 square pieces out of your other material, your other fabric, that measure 4 1/4 inches in square, and you need 4 of them. So we're talking about these pieces that'll eventually become these pieces. So the darker one is the bigger square. The 4 smaller squares are the lighter fabric. So I have those cut as well. Now, what you have to do is lay them out on your big square. So I'm going to try and move my camera down so you can see this, which means I won't be able to see myself anymore. There, I think you get the idea right there. Okay, so let's move some of this stuff out of our way. So here we go. Here's my square, the big square, And I said before, the measurements of that are 7 3/4 inches. And then I have 4 of these smaller squares in my other color, which are 4 1/4 inches square. So what you do is you lay right sides together, one of your smaller squares on top of your larger square, and you're placing that in the top left-hand corner, okay? And you're just lining the edges up with the edges of the larger square. Then take a couple of pins and just pin them in so it's secure. Now, if they don't line up quite exactly square, not to worry. Get them as close as you can, because they're built into these measurements are your squaring dimensions. So you have more than enough fabric here for this. You take your second square, right side down, or so right sides are together of these two, and put it in the bottom right hand corner, lining up the edges with the edges of the larger square, and then pinning this together. Now you're pinning it because in a moment I'm going to be drawing a line, and you just want to keep it, you know, straight so it's not shifting around when you draw your line. So there we go. I have those two squares, and they do overlap, and that's okay. Pinned to my larger square. So now I'm going to take a ruler and a pencil. Because this is the wrong side, you can mark with whatever you want to mark with. I'm just going to use a mechanical pencil. You put your ruler from corner to corner diagonally across those two pieces and just draw a line. Simple as that. So you can see my line. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of this line. So I'm going to move the camera over there and show you what this looks like. Okay, so at my sewing machine, I have got my foot in. This foot is sort of a variation. It's called an OV foot for my Janome, but it's marked with 1/4 inch lines, center line, etc. You could use your F foot. Don't use one that's got a guide on the edge of it. So let's just put this on here. There it is. I'm all threaded and ready to go. Now on my machine, I have set it for a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So all I have to do is put this under here, and I'm going to use this particular foot, and each foot might be a little different, so you have to figure out for your sewing machine which foot works best. But I want to sew a seam or a stitch line 1/4 inch away from that drawn line on each side of it. So we're going to start on one side, and I'm just going to line up the edge of my foot because I know with what the settings are on my machine that that will give me a 1/4 inch, and away we go. A little faster might not hurt. Let's cut the thread. Okay, so I have got a stitch line 1/4 inch away down. I don't know if you can see it because it's white on the one side of that line. So I'm just going to turn it around, and I'm going to do the same thing again on the other side of the line. So 1/4 inch away from that drawn line. Now, of course, if I was doing a lot of these, I would chain stitch one right after the other, and I am actually doing quite a few of them, but I'm not going to do the chain stitching for this demonstration. I'm just working on one set at the moment. Out of this piece, we are going to get 4 flying geese that measure, finished measure, 3 by 6 inches. Okay, so that's done. So I'm going to go back to my cutting table and show you the next thing. Okay, so now I'm going to take my pins out of my fabric. I don't need those at this point in time. And then grab a ruler and my rotary blade, and I'm going to line my ruler up right along that line that we drew earlier. And I'm going to stand up for this, and I'm just going to cut right down that line. So I have these two pieces that look like this. Now I'm going to take them over here. I'm just cleaning off some space. I'm going to take them over here to my ironing mat, and I will show you what that looks like. There we are. And yep, my iron's hot. So I'm just pressing on the sewn line for a minute to set the seam, and then I'm going to pull up each of these triangles that we have now on here and just press them. Now, you want to be careful when you're pressing these because they are now cut on a bias, and so they will stretch, and you don't want to stretch them. So just give them a good press, and I'm pressing away from the center. It really doesn't matter, but I just find that's the easiest. Okay, so now we'll come back here to the cutting mat. I'm just straightening you up here. Hopefully this doesn't want to sag. There we go. Okay, now what we're going to do is grab two more of those squares and putting them right sides together, just going to line it up on the bottom. Sorry, I'm out of shot. Just in the bottom, lining up the edges again. So we have a little funny thing that looks like this. Take our ruler and take our pencil and take our pencil. Where did my pencil go? There it is. And you're going to draw a line from corner to corner on the diagonal. So right up here, the top point on each of these. Now you can pin these. I tend not to pin them. They stay pretty good. Want to get them to the sewing machine. You'll see what I mean. So now we're going to go back over to the sewing machine and I'll show you what's next. So I'm at the sewing machine, and basically what I'm going to do is, and I'm just lining this back up again. If you want to pin it, you can, as I said. And I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch stitch line on either side of that line I just drew on the one square. So very much the same as I did at the first of this. Now, since I have two of these to make this time, I'm going to do some chain stitching. Now you see this slid off the spot, but it's not difficult to line it back up. Again, if you're not bang on accurate, it's not really going to matter. You want to get it as close as you possibly can, but because there's some allowance here in the fabric, as you'll see when we square them up, nothing to worry about. So let's cut the thread. So these two pieces are sort of attached to each other temporarily right now. Just going to flip them over, and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch stitch line down the other side of that drawn line. And so you can see when you do chain stitching, things go a little bit faster because you're doing exactly the same thing, so it's repetitive, so away you go. And you'll be surprised how fast you can get through things like this when you're able to chain stitch. Okay, we are done. We'll cut that. Oops. And then I'm just going to take my scissors, if I can find them. There they are. And see where they're joined here. I'm just trimming that off. And now we're going to go back over to the cutting table. Okay, so I have my two pieces right here, and all I'm going to do is like I did last time. I'm going to put my ruler along that penciled line, and I'm going to cut these pieces in half. So we have two pieces that look like that. I'm going to do the same thing to the next piece. And then I'm going to take them over to my pressing area. Move you in here so you can see it. Sorry for the camera doing what it's doing, but if you saw the way I'm setting this up, you'd laugh. Okay, there we go. So I take these and I want to set my seam. Just getting them in position here. Okay, so I just set my seam, and then I just pull back gently the flap, the triangle, and press each one. And once they're pressed, all I need to do is trim them. So I'm going to move you again and show you how the ruler works with this. So let's grab my flying geese here. So you take one of the flying geese, let's get it in shot, and you take your Creative Grids Ultimate Flying Geese tool. Now there's two sections to this. There's one up here, it says trim 1, and then at the bottom, and you flip it around, it says trim 2. So follow the numbers. Trim 1, there's all these lines. Now we know, according to the legend on the side, where I figured out I was going to make 3x6 geese, there's a letter, F. And on the ruler, which I know is very difficult to see, there are lines and they're marked A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. I want the F line, which happens to be almost in the center. It's this white line, and it's like a triangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up, there's that glare again, sorry. I'm going to line up that triangle with my triangle on here. So I find F on here. I take the two lines that come out of the F and I line them up. Now, will they match up perfectly? Maybe yes, maybe no, but they should come very, very close. And so you just have to do some small adjustments to get them so they line up as close as you possibly can with the triangle in here. And then you see you have this excess fabric on the edges. You're just going to trim that off on those two sides, so off the right side and the top. Now all you do is flip your unit upside down, so the triangle's going the opposite way, and take your ruler, flip it around to trim number 2, find the F, and here you will see edge lines that say 3x6 for this particular one. Each one's marked for the size, the finished size of the flying goose. Flying geese. So you kind of line that up because you have two straight edges now that you just trimmed. So you line up the left edge and you line up the bottom edge and kind of do a little bit of fudging around with the triangle in the middle on the F line. Again, this won't be absolutely perfect, but it'll be very, very close, within like a 1/16 of an inch kind of a thing. So when you have that, again, you're just going to trim off the right side and the top. And there you have your finished flying goose. Now this one's a 3x6. But as I said, the ruler shows you the measurements and what you need for fabric for a variety of sizes. It goes from 1.5 by 1 inch all the way up to 4 by 8 inches. So one ruler covers that many different flying geese, which I think is good for the money. And it makes it so easy. And you can fly through these, pardon the pun, you can fly through these in no time at all. So that's how I make my flying geese. And I get 4 flying geese out of 2 pieces of fabric based on the dimensions on the ruler. So I hope you found this interesting. And again, that ruler is by Creative Grids. It's Ultimate Flying Geese tool, and I'm sure you can find it at your local quilt store or online. So enjoy. Bye for now.